everybody, it's Eric Papenfuse. It's Friday, so it must be a buy day, and we're here at the 2025 Pennsylvania Farm Show, right here at the Butter Sculpture. And I'm joined by guest videographer and farm show aficionado. You know her from last year. It's Rachel. Rachel, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
All right, Rachel, we're going to start right off with the trivia question as we walk this way. Guess how many pounds of butter were used to make that cow?
I saw this online and I forget now. I'm gonna say 300 pounds.
Oh, that's so light.
I know. I realize that
it's
now.
actually 1,000 pounds of butter. Can you believe it?
That was my next guess.
And don't worry, it's all going to get reused, composted after the farm show. Now, last year, you may recall, I walked around with a bag of 18th century books, and we talked about the English agricultural revolution. That was exciting. I'll put the link to that episode. We did manure trivia. But this year, we can pause here. We're going to talk a little bit more about the farm show as an anthropological experiment. And we've now walked to the trading post where you can get custom hat shaping as well as everything cowboy. And that will bring us to our first book, which is considered, Rachel, pulp fiction. And it is Cow Country Law. Now, do you know why pulp fiction was called pulp fiction? Do you know why I got that term?
Does it have to do with oranges?
It has to do with the paper quality. A lot of these books had really low paper quality in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, so they don't hold up that well, and that's why they were called pulp. At any rate, they are the successors of the penny dreadfuls and the dime novels that we've had on buy day before. But in the 20th century, these were books that were incredibly popular. It was not uncommon for a pulp fiction title, especially a Western title, maybe sell 1 million copies. Can you believe that?
Wow.
And of course, Cow Country Law continues the tradition of the penny dreadfuls in which youth were sort of rebelling against their parents. Let me just read you a little bit. What would you do if your father was sheriff of a crooked town and head of a political graft ring and offered to cut you in on it? What would you do? Would you rebel against your father and join the outlaws? Or would you take the bait and have plenty of easy money and marriage to a judge's beautiful daughter? Well, you're not going to know that unless you buy Cow Country Law. And that's our first book here for the farm show. Let's go over and check out some of the animals next. Okay, Rachel, we've made it to the horse area or the barn. And we've got a beautiful horse behind us. And I've got a great book. And I like this book a lot because it's got a homemade Pennsylvania cover to it with homemade stitching, which is really nice. It's definitely 19th century. And then inside, it's a farrier's guide that was published by a gentleman from Virginia in 1828. It's also fun because it has a skeleton of a horse, which reminds me a little bit of the episode we did on Jefferson and his moose skeleton sent to Buffon. But I was just speaking to the young farrier there, and it is the same technique used today as it was back then to determine the age of a horse. Do you know how to tell the age of a horse, Rachel?
The rings on their hooves?
No, that's a good guess. I can tell you exactly how to do it. You do it by examining their teeth. And if you look at their teeth at various ages, you can tell. And would you like to guess? I did not check, but I checked with the farrier there, and she said, do you know how old that horse is?
4 years old.
14. So
wow.
It's actually quite an old, fully developed horse. Yeah, I don't know. You're gonna maybe need to review this book.
Well, if I could look at its chompers, I might have been able to guess.
This book is fascinating. Look at that title page because you can talk about not only how to breed and raise them, but how you geld them, how you understand their skeleton and their ages and all these things. Plus, it has, like last year's book, a whole host of maladies and cures. So we're ready for one more trivia question, Rachel.
Alrighty.
And that is, have you heard of the hungry evil?
The hungry evil?
The hungry evil. Look at that. The hungry evil is an actual malady that can afflict horses. It's known because of the rapid eating of large quantities of foods that it takes to satisfy the horse. And do you know what the cure for the hungry evil is?
A nice Thanksgiving dinner.
Well, no. Probably the opposite. I'm afraid it is purging the stomach, which doesn't sound very good. And then giving him every morning a lump of chalk, and that will cure the hungry evil. The evil eye is cured by a good bleeding, but I didn't really want to go there. But anyhow, a great Pennsylvania farrier's book with techniques still in use today at the farm show. Well, Rachel, I'm told that since we're here on Friday, most of the pigs have already been sold, but we did manage to find one, which we'll show you in just a minute. And there is, of course, this great seat. And it's an appropriate place, Rachel, to talk about, I think, animal rights. Don't you? Yeah, just a little bit. It may be surprising, but this reminds me of the old Orwell saying, 4 legs bad, 2 legs good. So I'm going to stand up now. I'm going to walk over here, and we're going to talk about a book which I think is one of the rarest and most interesting books ever to come in to the Scholar. And that is this book here, Rachel, called The Criminal Prosecution and Capital Punishment of Animals, published in 1906 by a gentleman by the name of Edward Evans. And Edward Evans was an American scholar who was one of the first great animal rights activists. In fact, he argued that animals had feelings and should be treated humanely, and this was pretty revolutionary. And he did it based on a historical study here called The Criminal Prosecution and Capital Punishment of Animals, which talked about the history of animal trials in the Middle Ages. Now, is this something you're familiar with at all, Rachel?
Not this time.
All right. Well, let me show you a very cute picture of a pig and all its piglets. And I will tell you that in the Middle Ages, oftentimes pigs were prosecuted and put on trial for murder. And sometimes the piglets too. And there are examples in this book of the piglets getting off, but the pigs actually being sentenced to death. And that's what's happening in this frontispiece. This is an actual trial in which the pig has been sentenced to death by hanging. So this happened to hundreds of animals in the Middle Ages. There were donkeys that were accused of soliciting humans. There were worms that were accused of destroying crops. And there'd be actual trials, and people would get testimony saying that this was a good donkey and an upstanding citizen and would never do that, or that the worms had a lawyer that would basically come in and say that they should be defended, not just prosecuted for destroying crops. And what happens is a lot of these animals get executed. And if you were a pig, you wouldn't even be used for food. But if you were a cow, that would be a little different. Let me just read you a little bit. Ghent in 1578, Rachel, after a judicial sentence of death had been pronounced on a cow, she was slaughtered and her flesh was sold as butcher's meat, half the proceeds of the sale being given as compensation to the injured party, and the other half to the city treasury for distribution among the poor. This is a real thing in the Middle Ages, and you could see how somebody like Edward Evans, who believed in the rights of animals, would point to it as an example of animals being treated as if they were humans. And this brings us to the larger anthropological point of the farm show, which we'll discuss at our next stop. Once again, due to avian flu, there are very few actual birds at the farm show unless you go to the food court. But rather than go to the food court, we're here at the live incubator waiting for one of these eggs to hatch. If we're lucky, it'll hatch in the middle of this video. If not, we do have some ducks over in the incubator that have already hatched, which is very, very exciting. And this is where you were this morning. This line is all for the kids account, isn't it?
Yes, I helped out here this morning.
I just wanted to talk a little bit of the farm show as an anthropological experiment, because that's why people come to the farm show. It's really the people watch as much as it is animal watch. And I was reminded of the great anthropologist Clifford Geertz. Now, that's somebody we stock at the Midtown Scholar all the time. And in his interpretation of cultures, Rachel, he studied cockfighting in Bali. And he used cockfighting as a means, as a window into understanding the cultural relations between the public. And I thought I'd bring one book that has to do with gamecocks. And if we look here, you can see some of them ready for battle. And one of the things that I find interesting is that each of the towns and cities that were nearby had their own breed. For instance, there were the Baltimore Topknots that would fight against, say, the Pittsburgh Dominants. Seems a bit like the Ravens, maybe playing the Atlanta Falcons or something like that. At any rate, Geertz's great conclusion, he was almost arrested but it brought him some street cred with the people of Bali. And it was basically that this ritual was all about the power dynamics that you saw in regular society. And I think there's a lot we can learn from that today. And Rachel, you haven't made any jokes related to this.
I'm really trying not to.
Okay, good. I think that's good. This is a PG show. And next, let's go to our next stop. And in honor of her video today, I'm letting Rachel display the funny book. First of all, Rachel, though, what is on your head?
It is a spotted lizardfly headband. I'm not supporting the insect. I'm raising
You're
awareness.
raising awareness. Thank you.
So if you see one, squash it, but not the one on my head, because that means you would be kicking me in the head.
And you're sitting in a giant tractor wheel, which is appropriate for our funny book. If you haven't been to the farm show before, there's just so many things to do. What's today's funny book, Rachel?
It is Old Tractors and the Men Who Love Them.
I know.
How to keep your tractors happy and your family running.
We've seen a lot of men like that today.
Yes.
And what was your favorite thing about the 2025 farm show?
My favorite thing is always the cows. And I actually volunteered this morning at the Kissy Cow booth, so I got to hang out with them this morning.
It's Friday, so there's still time as you're watching this to come. Tomorrow is the last day of the 2025 farm show. I hope you'll come, enjoy the food court, enjoy seeing all the animals, and having a wonderful time. See you later. Bye-bye.